Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. This podcast is for and about women of colour and our relationship with nature. Hosted by me, Cherie Mack. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast is committed to exploring the experiences of women of colour with Mother Nature. We want to provide spaces where the hidden voices in the environmental and conservation conversations can explore their relationship with the natural world. Inspired by our time spent outdoors, we amplify the voices of women of colour, our stories, our conversations, interviews, photography, writing, and artwork. We'll be exploring our legacies, histories, and memories which have had an influence and effect upon how we perceive ourselves within the natural world and within the environmental and climate justice movements. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast has been made possible by the funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Thank you. Hello again and welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. We're still in October and this is just another episode coming out, one per week in October, and so far we have managed it. After this, there'll be one more episode in October and I think it will be just coming from me. We haven't got a load of other episodes to bring you from women of colour and their relationship with nature, but it's just a case of me just going to take up a little bit of space and tell you what we're doing moving forward, what's happening now, the current state of play. And it just means that I try and keep the introductions to each episode short and sweet instead of how they have been going recently. I've just got so much to tell you. I'm just full of the joys of autumn. And this is something that we do touch upon in this episode with the lovely Makeda Pennycooke. And it's such a pleasure and really warms my heart to revisit this episode, which we recorded back in June. The things that we had discussed are so relevant then and now. And the idea of how being with nature allows us to just be ourselves. Nothing special, nothing false, but to just be our whole self. And that's where the magic comes from. And this is something that we touch upon. Yeah, and we also explore, again, similar themes that have come out in other conversations that we've had, but we're looking at it at a different angle. And I just love that. The idea of religion and spirituality and God and goddess and just the whole divine, that female and masculine energy combined to create the divine. And divine, which is deep within Mother Earth, that we can draw upon this energy to be our best selves and also to get us through some really tough times, the dark night of the soul. And Makeda explores this, sharing her journey with us in such a beautiful way that, as I said, she touched my heart. Towards the end of the episode, Makeda mentions how she's offering a coaching therapy package for Black and Indigenous people of colour, were probably women of colour there. And I'm not sure if that offer is still available. However, I know that I sat down with Makeda after this episode was recorded to talk about, do I need coaching? Do I need that support and being held through the changes in my life that was happening back there in June? And what was so generous of Makeda was that she said to me, it sounds that I need support, therapeutic support rather than coaching at that time. And she was honest with me. You know, Makeda talked herself out of getting money and being paid and getting employed by giving me the truth that I needed. Which I knew was inside me, but I needed that permission, or that, yes, that's right. You do need to have some therapy. You do need some support going through these difficult times, Sheree. And it was having that conversation with Makeda that made me go and seek help. And it was help that I had to seek privately, because I knew I had to sit down and talk with a Black woman therapist. And they are few and far between available on the NHS. And if there were, there would be a long waiting list. There's a long waiting list anyhow, but I knew that I wasn't going to get any support and help and get things straight with myself if I was going to sit down with a white male or a white female therapist. I needed to converse with someone who looked like me, who had been through similar experiences like me, and who got me, who understood me, so I could be me. And I am so grateful for Makeda for pointing me in that right direction. So without further ado, let's get into this episode. And I say it every time, but I mean it every time. We've got quality. And thank you everyone who's listening. And thank you also to those people, individuals who have been reaching out and telling me how much they are enjoying this podcast, how it is touching them and inspiring them and opening up different realms within themselves. So thank you for that, because this is why we're here. This is why we're doing it, sharing our stories and making those connections. Okay, let's get into this episode. See you again soon. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Doing okay. I have my tea. Nice. It's early.
What is early then?
Well, it's 7 a.m. Not that early, but I usually have my tea around this time. It's how I like to start my day.
That's nice that you do have a routine or a ritual even.
It is a ritual. Several years ago, it's like I remember like mid-morning, 11:30. I was like, why am I so cranky? Because I had not had my tea.
And is it just normal tea or is it herbal tea?
It's a normal tea. It's PG Tips, which, yeah, we have a world market here that sells it. So, yeah, a friend of mine introduced it to me a few years ago, and nothing has tasted as good ever. I've been forever ruined for other teas. Teas, other black teas. I can do herbal teas, but other black teas, I can't.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. You know, it's like, I don't know, a bit of a roller coaster. There's some peaks, there's some troughs, and then your energy's with it as well. You know, right. So just trying to establish some kind of, and I don't want to say normal, but some kind of easy way of feeling and being, rather than be all at the extremes of high or low, but trying to get that even keel. And it's trial and error. It's trial and error.
For sure.
And you've just come back after a social media hiatus, haven't you?
I did.
How are you finding it?
I'm taking my time. Like I wasn't on there much over the weekend, and I thought I may not be on much on the weekends. Like that feels good for right now. I'm not, if I find myself mindlessly scrolling, I'll stop.
Yeah.
Right. So it's fine that I'm getting on, but if I'm just mindlessly scrolling, then I need to. So I'm just noticing my behavior more as I've stepped back into it. But I think I'm just going to have some different boundaries around it. Still want it to be engaging, still want it to be a platform that I use, but I want to be more purposeful and intentional. So,
Yeah, that sounds good. That does sound good. And it's Makeda, isn't it?
It's Makeda, yes.
Makeda. Where does that name come from, if I don't mind me asking?
I sure don't. I love telling it. So I was actually named after the Ethiopian Queen of Sheba. When my mother was pregnant with me, my dad was reading a book about her and decided that if I was a girl, that was the name he wanted me to have. And so I'm very grateful because if I was a boy, I was going to be named Michael.
So run of the mill.
Right. It's so right. And no offense, but that's my dad's name. So then I would have been like Michael Jr., which is like, no offense to the Michael Jr.'s in the world, but Makeda is way more like exotic. And so I was named after a queen. It really does mean queen and beautiful. And it has been a name that I have learned and am learning how to live into.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so thank you for that sharing.
Welcome. Yeah.
So the question is where are you in the world at this moment? What's the season and what can you see outside your window, please?
Yeah. So I am on the East Coast of the United States in Charlotte, North Carolina. And Charlotte is situated just near the south of the state. So we're about 30 minutes from the border of South Carolina. Charlotte is. So we really are pretty close to both states, North and South Carolina. It is summer here. We have just crossed over into the summer solstice. And so it's hot and muggy and humid and all the things that make up summer in the South. It hasn't gotten too bad yet, which we are grateful for, but it's coming. I can feel it.
Yeah.
And outside of my window, while I do live in a complex, I happen to be able to see several trees outside of my window, which I am grateful for. Sure, I can see cars that are parked, but mostly I can see the trees, which I love. And
do you know what kind of trees they are?
No.
They're green though. Yeah, they're green at the moment.
That I can tell you, they're green.
Yeah.
A couple of them are evergreens because even in the winter, they've still got leaves or branches and things on them, green things on them. So some of them are evergreen, but most of them will change color and drop their leaves in the fall, which is my favorite time of the year.
Mine too. I just love autumn, as we call it here, and basically because it is on that cusp of that idea of changes, and we know still life there as we're seeing those trees change color into the oranges and the browns, but then death's there, and it's just reminding us of that cycle.
Yeah, it's funny because summer used to be my favorite holiday. I consider myself a summer baby since I just had my birthday.
Yeah.
Very close to the summer solstice, right? So it's right on the cusp of the solstice. So I always considered myself a summer baby and loved summer. And a few years ago, man, suddenly I was like, I think I'm falling in love with autumn. And it is now my favorite time of the year. And I think some of that has to do with my journey and the work that I do and the connection that I found with nature. So I think all of that has tied into this shift that came for me a few years ago where autumn really is my favorite time of year. And I love spring, the waking up, the coming back alive. But yeah, there's something about autumn.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. So talking about what you do, tell us what do you do as a profession or your day-to-day job, and has it changed at all during COVID-19?
So I'm a certified life coach and work primarily with women who are navigating change. So my story is a rather lengthy one. We can get into that in just a minute, but it has led me to really appreciating how difficult change is, And so, having moved through some significant changes in my life, I recognize that the space between what was and what is not yet, that in between, is the place that most people struggle. And so, in my work, I try to hold space so that people can move through that in between to get to what it is that they really want. Because the in between, the thing about the in between and the thing about change is there's no timeline, right? There's no, you'll be here for 2 months and then you're going to go here for 3 months and then you're going to go there for 4 months. That's just not the way that it works, right? So what I do in my work is try to help people to hang in there, if you will, and to face the fears, the doubts, the negative self-talk, all the things that come up that cause us to want to run back to what's familiar, even if it's not what we want anymore, but at least we know it, and instead find the courage and the bravery to move towards what it is that they actually want. And for some people, that has looked like changing careers. For some people, that has looked like putting stronger boundaries in place so that they're not overextending themselves. For some people, that has looked like making the decision to not leave their career, but find more space to do some of the things that they really enjoy because they love their job, but it's just that it consumes so much of their time. The one woman I'm thinking of in particular, she just didn't have enough strong boundaries at home and at work. And so this thing that she was super passionate about, she had no time to do it. So we just helped her figure out how to reclaim some of her time.
It's beautiful how you describe it, because when you are talking about it, I'm thinking, oh, a bit midwifey there, but then what actually came to mind was actually a cocoon, or like that you're holding that space, say like for that caterpillar's got in a cocoon, and like so while these changes are happening, you're keeping these individual women safe and supported until they, get all the tools or get their wings sort of strong enough to like burst out and like, woohoo, I'm a butterfly and like to live in that beautiful new state. But again, it be changing all the time. So that's beautiful how you described it. And I'm so pleased that there's you and there's others like you that are providing that space to get to grips with so many different changes that we have to go through as women. And to have that support in that journey is priceless, because you do feel so alone, and that's only happening to you, but to have that, expert, but also sister. It's sister in the making. I like that. I like that. Thank you.
And the support is so critical, right? And the encouragement. And the thing about my work is I'm not one of those coaches who feel like I'm an expert and I need to tell you what to do. In my work and where I sit is when I'm in the room with a coachee, a client, and it's usually virtual because I've always done my work virtually, and now it has to be virtual. But even so, it's still a sacred space. In that space, I am not the smartest person in the room. My client is the smartest person in the room. They know what they need. My job is just to help them to get there, to help them access what they already know, giving themselves permission to feel what they need to feel, to say out loud what they need to say out loud. But over and over again in my work, I have discovered that people know. They have the wisdom. Even if they think they don't, even if they say they don't know, I know they know. Now, that has been an evolution. When I first started as a coach, I was very much, I know all the things and let me tell you. And then I discovered that that's just not the case. And let me just hold the space for you to say what you need to say and feel brave, safe enough to say it.
Yeah. I totally get that. Say that I've been on that journey of thinking, I know everything. I can help you. You need me to help you. That's all. But I do know now that we do have that inner wisdom. We have all the answers inside of us. We just need that time and space, and maybe that little nudge or something major, something little that gets us to that point of going within, to listen within. And some actually call this, maybe if it's a big thing, like it doesn't have to be a big thing in a sense, dark night of the soul. And I know I've heard you mention this about your journey to where you are now, and why or how you're doing what you are doing now. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Sure, happy to share. I'll try to get it down because it's a rather lengthy story, but I'll try to tell the short version of it.
I'm sitting comfortable.
So about 18 years ago, I actually moved to Charlotte, North Carolina to help plant a church. So I was a church planner, part of that church planning team, was ordained as a pastor, was the executive pastor on team at that church. It was a non-denominational church. And very, I'm a strong leader anyway, like firstborn child, all the things. So I have all the typical attributes of a firstborn child, right? So very much leaning into my leadership, stepped into a role that Black women in particular, had never really held. It was as an executive pastor when I was promoted into that role. I went searching for executive pastors and all I could find were middle-aged white men. And I can pretend to be many things, but I cannot pretend to be a middle-aged white man. So finding my sea legs, if you will, as a woman leader in a role that was typically held by white men, because it was a multi-racial congregation, was part of my sort of figuring myself out, knowing who I am, what I wanted. About 10 years into that journey, some things began to shift inside of me. And I'm somebody whose faith is an important part of how I move through the world. I grew up very traditional in my Christian understanding, very rigid, very God is in a box kind of a way of thinking, right? Like this is the box that God fits in, and these are the rules that you have to follow to be in that box. That's what I grew up in. And then I sort of evolved less away from rule-following type of Christianity to more of a follow God for the blessings, if you will. So you follow the rules, still rules, but the first set of rules was so you wouldn't be punished. The second set of rules is so you'd be rewarded, right? So still very rigid, still very much in a box. About 10 years, so this was beginning of 2012, I just woke up one morning and said, it's all a lie. Like we've told people a sincere lie. Like none of it's true. God's not real. It's all been a lie. Now I've lived my whole life believing this thing. So my whole spirit, I was just like, it's gone, right? Like I didn't want it anymore. And that was hard, as you can imagine, very difficult. It didn't last very long, about 4 or 5 months. But during that time, I felt like I didn't really have a footing, but I actually didn't care. And that's important because of what would happen 3 years later, 2 to 3 years later. But in 2012, I felt like I had no footing, but I actually didn't care. So I went buck wild, did all the crazy things. Not really, but
in the scheme of things to what you were doing before.
Exactly. Yeah. After about 4 or 5 months, I came out of that space and I was like, okay, God is real. I'm back to that. But all of this rule following and boxing up God just wasn't working for me anymore, which is kind of hard when you're the pastor at a church, when you're one of the pastors. I wasn't the senior pastor, but I was third in command in this organization. What we were saying no longer felt true to me. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew it didn't connect for me anymore. And so then I had to figure out, okay, what do I do? And all that I could come up with was that I needed to step down from my position with no clear sense of what I was going to do next or where I was going to go. And that took about 2 years to make that, for me to work through it myself, right, and to figure it out myself, and then to tell the pastors and the organization. And no one had ever imagined that I would never always be a part of this organization. I mean, I helped start the thing, built it from nothing. There were over 2,000 people who were attending by the time I left. And so I was a significant part of the history, and it was a significant part of my identity at the same time, right? So it took about 2 years for us to work through that plan. And then I left in 2014. That's when I started my coaching practice and started it for women leaders, is what it started out as. Woman, did leadership, Black woman, finding her, like I had all the sort of knowledge, wisdom. I could tell you what to do kind of thing. When I left that church, started my business, at the same time, my spirituality started to unravel completely. So this period of not believing in God suddenly became, I don't know what any of it means anymore, right? And all of it started to unravel. And I started going to an Episcopal church, never been an Episcopalian, didn't know anything about it, but I was felt very much led to go there. And the beauty of the Episcopal Church is that they don't do black and white. They live in the gray, right? Okay. And I needed that grayness to figure out what my spirituality was going to look like. And that is when I began to find myself drawn to nature. So I need to back up just a little bit. Into about a year after I went through that whole God is not real thing, went through a significant hurt within that community that I was a part of, a really significant hurt, and went to the beach. I'm Jamaican, spent every summer of my I grew up in the States, but spent every summer of my childhood in Jamaica by the ocean. Pretty sure there's salt water running through my veins. But the ocean is my home. Like, I feel most at home at the ocean. After that, during that period of that hurt, I went to the ocean and I could feel her healing me. And that was significant. Then when my spirituality started to unravel, I was once again drawn to nature. So I'm a city girl. I grew up in New York City. Like, the epitome of cities is where I grew up. Brooklyn, Manhattan, like all of those things, right? And this city girl was suddenly wanting to be in the woods, which made no sense. But I followed it, and I would go to the woods, and I met God. I met the divine in the woods. And so suddenly I wanted to be in the woods, or I wanted to be at the ocean, or I just wanted to do these things that seemed out of character for who I am, for who I knew myself to be. And what I found is that those places actually helped me meet myself and helped me meet the divine in a new way. So that instead of it being this restrictive box, I suddenly felt the expansion of the divine and how big and magnificent she is, right? And so really learning to embrace that feminine side of God and really just dropping into the embodiment of all of that. And so the dark night of my soul came in a couple of places, but deciding I didn't believe in God, the wounding that I got, getting hurt the way that I was hurt, and then having all of that unravel completely. And when it feels like the foundation upon which your life has been built is crumbling beneath you, that is a scary place to be. And it is hard, and it is impossible. And I know that space. So when I work with my clients and I tell them, this is hard, this is impossible, this is truly one of the most difficult things you might do, I say that from experience, not just from head knowledge, but having walked it out. And I tell them, you can do hard things. Even if we have to baby step your way through it, you can do hard things. And it's because I learned that I could do hard things. And nature played a big part of that for me. So I'm going to stop because I've talked a lot.
No, it's Thank you. Thank you for sharing that journey, which is, I mean, I can't, I can start to imagine how difficult it was, having your whole foundation of who you are basically start to crumble from underneath you. And like looking around and finding, nowhere to stand, nowhere to feel safe and to feel yourself again. So I totally get that from my own experiences. But the journey that you have described would be so difficult and horrendous for you. But the way that you've described it and brought your wisdom now and body wisdom to it, it's a beautiful journey that you are sharing with others, but also bringing to bear upon others to help them through their dark nights of the soul, basically. And that is such a lovely way to be in service, and this just from being a pastor, you were already in service through that, but now you have found your true true way, which sits authentically with you of how to serve others. Yeah. And I totally respect that and love that, and I thank you for sharing that.
Thanks for letting me share.
I just want to unpick it a little bit, because you mentioned your childhood and Jamaica and the ocean, but a city girl. So how was your family made up that you'd be your city girl, Jamaica?
So my whole family is Jamaican. That's my heritage, that's my background, everybody. And my parents were met in Brooklyn, New York. They both were in Brooklyn. Her cousin was dating my father's brother, and so introduced them. They met, got together. My mom got pregnant with me while they were in New York, in Brooklyn. So I was born in Brooklyn. And then 3 months later, we moved to Jamaica. We moved back to Jamaica. And my sister, who is less than a year younger than me, was born in Jamaica. So as soon as I was old enough to travel, we went back to Jamaica. We were in Jamaica for a few years and then moved to Canada so that my dad could go to grad school. And my parents split up when we were in Canada. And so when my parents split, my mother had family in New York. And so she took my sister and I to New York. And when my dad was finished with grad school, he went back to Jamaica. He wanted to be back in his country. And so they divorced. I have very few memories of my parents together. And so they divorced. My mother raised my sister and I in Brooklyn. And every summer, practically like the day after school got out, we were sent to Jamaica to be with my dad. My grandmother worked for Air Canada, so she would often take us, when we were really young, she would take us down there. And then as we got older, we would travel unaccompanied. As unaccompanied minors, we felt like we were such big deals. But yeah, every summer of my childhood was spent in Jamaica. And I am a beach snob as a result of that. And
What does that mean? What does that mean?
People say beach snob. So if you've ever been to the Caribbean, you know that it is crystal clear blue water. You can see the bottom of the ocean. Like, it is just beautiful. In America, at least on the east side of the America, the water is more brown than it is blue. And it's mucky and muddy and less like water you'd actually that I would want to go into. So while I love the beach and I go to the beach in America, I cannot think of a time that I've lived in America that I've walked and gotten into the water here. Take me to the Caribbean, I'm all over it. Here, I will just wade in the water, like my ankles, maybe up to my knees, but that's about all that I'm doing. So the beach snob in me is like, if it's not crystal clear blue water, I'm not getting in it. But then I see some of your pictures and I'm like, I'd probably get in that water. It's not muddy or mucky or brown, right? So that's what I mean by beach snob.
Okay, I get you then. I get you, because I mean, I went to the Caribbean maybe when I was 33, and we went to Trinidad and Tobago and Barbados, and there's a special place in Tobago which is Pigeon Point, the kind of beach you have to pay to go into, a bit exclusive, and that was just paradise. I'd never experienced it. It was that turquoisey blue sea, the golden pale white sand, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm in heaven. But I know there's no time soon, and since then that I've been able to go back. So but to keep that connection going with the sea, I do have to get in to our sea here on the North Coast. And there's times when it is clear, when it's really, really, you can see the bottom and the sun's, dappling on the top like diamonds. But there's times when it has been rough and stormy and it's murky. There's seaweed. But then also there's rubbish. The last time I was collecting rubbish from the sea. I keep going in and out and collecting it. And that's disappointing, and, it makes me a bit mad. But I keep returning. I do have to keep returning, because I'm with you in that sense. Like, the ocean and the sea is healing. It's healing to me. you had that as part of your life every summer. And you said that you do sometimes go to the East Coast where you are. You also mentioned that now you had a hankering for the woods. What's that? Because you did mention the idea of you met yourself there and the divine and a she. So
yeah. So the thing about North Carolina, Charlotte is like right smack in the middle of the state, right? Maybe not right smack, but like it's 2 hours to the mountains one way, 3 hours to the beach the other way. So it's sort of, you pick your nature and you can get to it. So that's one of the advantages of North Carolina. And then we have all these really great greenways around town. And I didn't know how else to explain it except to say that I would be like, I have to go to the woods. Like, I just want to go walk among the trees. And we have greenway spaces here, but I could still hear the sounds of traffic. And I wanted like green woods. And so I would go on a hike. I found this park. It's not really a park. Nature preserve, I guess, and they have multiple trails.
Nature reserves we have here. Yeah.
And they have multiple trails on it. And so I would just go there and I would walk. I'd put my arm around on the trees and I could feel, I don't know if this makes sense, but I could feel the energy coursing through the trees, because these are trees that have they've been here forever, right? They've withstood some stuff, storms and mankind being mankind and like all these amazing, and still they stand, and not just stand, but they rise. I remember even before that, like I went to California and went to the redwood forest, and there are these trees. Those trees have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and they are still growing amidst all the chaos and things that have erupted around them. And so I would go and I would just be in the silence. I remember going on one hike, and I am not a hiker. I'm not like one of these fitness people. I'm hella out of shape, like all the things. But I went on this hike, and it was a hard hike. And at one point it opened up, like, and there was a tree stump. So I sat on the tree stump and I could hear the silence, like nothing. There was nothing. And in the silence, I could hear the divine just being, the essence of sort of this presence that is bigger and greater than all of us, right? And I, in those spaces, began to realize that this being in nature, I may never live in the country, because I don't think I can like full on live in the country. But being around trees and near water is something that's important to my soul's being and my evolution as a human. And in the silence of the woods, I don't have to be anything other than Makeda. The trees are not trying to be mushrooms or birds, or they're just being trees, right?
Yeah.
The birds are not trying to be the bugs that are running on the floor or the dragonflies that are flying around. They're just being birds, and they're having conversations and they're doing what they're doing. Nature just is. And in that space, I learned that it's okay for me to just be.
Yes.
I don't have to put on a persona. I don't have to try to become like somebody else, because the majesty of the tree is that it just is a tree. Yeah. The magic of the ocean is that it just is the ocean. Yeah. So my majesty, my magic lives in me just being me. I don't have to try to become somebody or something else. I get to just be me in all of my multifaceted, multi-complex way. I get to be all of those things. And so nature gave and gives me permission to just be who I am and not apologize for it and not be afraid to take up space, right? So I mentioned earlier that my name is something that I'm living into, that I'm learning to grow into. And it's this idea of being this queen who does not have to apologize for who I am. I get to take up the space I take up, right? I walk into a room and my presence shows up before I do. And I used to feel like I needed to apologize for that. nature helped me learn I don't need to apologize for that, that I get to take up all the space I need to take up, and that be okay.
Yeah.
And so that sort of is how nature sort of helped me learn myself. And then in that space, I was like, how can I decide that God fits in this box that my training, my Christian training taught me? And when my spirituality was unraveling, I found different places to help me reconnect. So crystal energy, I have a couple with me now. The idea of ritual and how beautiful ritual can be. I've always loved the moon. And so me and the full moon, I go outside and I see Mama Moon. Hey, Mama Moon, good to see you. Right? And so I have just found my spirituality has expanded. Now I still identify as Christian, right? And that will probably always be a core part of my identity. But what that means has expanded beyond just this box of follow these rules and this is what it means. And so God, for me, there's a lot of baggage around that term, so I don't use it very often. For me, it's about the divine. And the divine, feminine, masculine, just whatever I might need in that moment. I've learned to embrace all of it.
Gosh, yeah. You've lost me for words here, because the way you just described that, because I've struggled to put into words how I feel, the experience I have when I'm being with nature, and that energy that you're saying in the tree, I'm going, yeah. That idea of that with nature, we are given permission to just be. And it's like, I have struggled for years I've always said, like, when I'm with nature, I feel like all my identities have been stripped away and I'm just connecting on a bodily level, and it is just being. But the way that you just said that is like, God, we need to bottle it. We need to bottle what you just said. Because it was like, yes, and I'm sorry, but I was just saying in my head, preach, sister, preach. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It has given me so many gifts being out in nature that I could not have expected. Yeah. So,
yeah. Just a couple more questions. And this is the idea of how have you been receiving your gifts from nature while in lockdown? It's something that I've been struggling with, and also I've been trying to find ways to share how I'm experiencing nature, with the women's group and the girls group that we've been working with, taking them out before lockdown to have experiences with nature. But of course that hasn't been possible to do it face to face. So how have you been getting your nature fix?
Yeah, so I walk almost every day. I go in the early mornings, mostly because it's 1,000 degrees outside right now. So if I don't get out before, I might melt. So I try to go for a walk every day, and there's a greenway right behind my house. So if it's super early, I won't go on the greenway just for safety reasons. I'm a New Yorker after all. So, I always assume someone's hiding in the trees. But there are lots of trees around where I live. And so just being out, and I have this little loop that I do, takes me about 30 minutes to do it. At one point, about 3/4 of the way, I don't know what flowers they are. I don't know but the scent is spectacular. And so I will stop and just inhale the aroma of those flowers or those blooming trees. I have no idea what they are. I don't know where it's coming from. I think I see a tree that might be it, but I don't know for sure. I just know that I can smell it. And so trying to bring all of my senses into the experience while I'm walking. So it's not just what am I seeing, but what am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I feeling? What am I sensing? Right. And really trying to take all of that in that walk. We had several weeks where it was raining pretty consistently, and I have a patio. So I would just sit outside in my patio and let the rain waters. I just just being with the rain while it was raining, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't getting wet or anything because my patio is covered, but I would just sit outside while it rained. And then on Friday, on my birthday, I had to go. So I had to go out to get something. There was a period where I needed to wait. So I drove to a park. I just parked my car, and there was a canopy that had been created by the trees. And I just sat underneath it. And it was just so like peaceful and beautiful and soul nourishing for those few minutes that I could sit there. And so for me, nature, I have chosen not to go hiking or do all the things, mostly because nobody's following the rules out there, and I don't,
Yes.
But I've tried to get outside as much as I can, just even if it's just to go for a walk. And I try to do that every day if I can.
Yeah. Appreciating nature that's on your doorstep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And really embracing it. I do this embodiment work that invites us to, one of the pieces in my personal journey right now is separating sexuality and sensuality, right? We're disconnecting those two things. And when I go on this walk, I get to focus in on the sensuality that I might be experiencing in nature. And those flowers, I mean, I should ask somebody who knows, but God, they smell amazing.
That's what I was going to ask, because you are connecting with nature through your body, through the senses. It's an embodied experience. So, and you're saying about that amazing smell of the flowers. Do you need to know the names? That's
probably not.
I oscillate between, I need to know the name because I've got these weeds that are in my yard and they've been growing all over and they've been great. They've been little purple flowers, and every time I see them, they bring a smile in my face. And I was thinking, I should really find out the name of them. And I'm thinking, why do I need to? Why do I need to name? Because in the naming, there is also that ownership or possessing sort of thing. If we think about colonialization and conquerors and explorers and planting their flag, and I name you, but they were already living and being before you came along with your name and flag.
Right, yeah.
So
that's good.
Do you know? So
yes. Yeah.
I mean, I do, but there's sometimes I think, I want to know your name. I want to know. Yeah. But maybe it is a case of because I want to pass it on to someone, maybe. But then again, but there is that sense of ownership, and the other side could be belonging. If I know your name, I know, but so that's something that I've got to work
complex, out, right? And I guess it's where's the motivation? So I can be in my head a lot, right? So sometimes the desire to know what something is about intellectualizing an experience that probably just needs to be an embodied experience rather than bringing my intellect or my mind into it. Yeah. It's not that my mind doesn't have a place in the journey, but sometimes it's just good to let my body experience it without having my mind need to try to make sense of it. So I appreciate that call out. It's a good call out.
And I appreciate that, what you said about separating sensuality and sexuality, because there's a lot of shame that's around it, in the sense, and that goes in with that disconnect with how we live in our heads rather than our bodies, and that isn't encouraged. Or the idea of actually experiencing pleasure through the everyday, the sacred in the everyday, that is something that we deny ourselves, or is denied from us, or if we try and do it, then we're weird or we're freaky or you're just too much, stop being so hypersexualized. And it's not, it's actually not. It's actually being feeling, and it's allowing us to have that pleasure. I've just got this thing that's just fallen off my board there, but our desire is our pleasure, and it's the case, and it doesn't have to be all caught up in sex or
nope.
I desire a really sweet oat milk latte with a little bit of maple syrup in. And when I get it, I'm like, that's so lovely. Yeah.
So for so long, at least in my personal journey, pleasure and desire, these words that you're using, have always just been tied to sex, right?
Yeah.
And sex is bad. I grew up in traditional Christianity, and trying to disconnect those ideas and separate them and be able to be enjoying things and naming that I desire something that isn't about sex, right? And just really bringing in that embodied sense of sensuality and fullness. Like someone sent me chocolate covered strawberries for my birthday. And I love strawberries and I love chocolate, and you bring them together and it's like magic, right? And to just enjoy the sensation of the strawberry and the chocolate in my mouth, and to feel that is pleasure and desire all wrapped up in one. That ain't got nothing to do with sex, right? Exactly. But it is a sensual experience to eat that chocolate covered strawberry, right? And so that's part of my work, and noticing the things that bring me joy, right? And really paying attention to that, especially during COVID. That has been my word. So every year I pick a word, and my word for this year was yes. It was going to be my year of yes. And when I accepted that yes was going to be my word, and I made my vision board and I did all these things, my vision board told me that my year of yes was really about finding the things that brought me joy, that it was a yes to get to joy. But I imagined that there would be going to museums, and I would be taking these different trips, and I was going to start dating. I had all these things in my head of what that was going to look like. And then COVID happened, and I can't leave my house, and I can't do anything. And so what I've been doing is, on purpose, noticing the things that bring me joy, even when I'm at home. And so I started daily monitoring the things that bring me joy. And some days, I will admit that there are some days when I don't have anything on that list. Now, I have a gratitude practice. I've had a gratitude practice for years. Every day, end of the day, I'm jotting the things that I'm grateful for. I do that every day, regardless. This thing of naming my daily joys is separate from my gratitude list. And so I'm paying attention to the fact that I had a conversation with my girlfriend in Australia yesterday. When her name popped up on my phone, my whole being lit up, right? One of my favorite people in the world, right? So it was a joy-filled moment that I could feel in my body, right? So noticing these daily joys has been part of this practice of noticing the pleasure, noticing where I'm getting lit up, where I'm getting, where my body is really having this experience that is not tied to going out or doing a bunch of things, but like it's just being with myself in my experiences.
Being present.
And that is exactly what it's requiring of me, more presence to my daily life, which has been an unexpected gift from COVID, right?
Yeah. It's so weird that you mentioned that, because, I've been on and off social media, but I came back on just before the weekend, and it was to share my droplets of joy, because I have been struggling with the current situation, not just with COVID-19, but with all the uprisings that's happening. And, it was a case of like forgetting or not seeing or not appreciating what I do have within my life, or what is here now, because I'm thinking about the past that's gone, grieving the past, and then I'm super worried about what's happening in the future, and what I was doing was missing out on my now and my present. So it was going back into the sea, because I hadn't been in for a couple of weeks because of fears and different things. And it was getting back into the sea and getting back into my body and feeling the cold and feeling the water wash over me, and then carrying that feeling with me out back into my everyday. But it was that tingling feeling. Maybe there was an iceberg in my belly or chest, because it was a bit cold. But it was a reminder that I'm here now, and enjoy, savor, express gratitude for here and now. So so I'm with you on that. Those moments of joy.
My gratitude practice has been a lifesaver, and I don't I don't say that like colloquially, like I say that literally, because when my life was falling apart, I forced myself to find things to be grateful for every day, minimum of 5 things that I am grateful for. In the midst of my life falling apart, that practice helped me not fall completely into despair, right?
Yeah.
And so my gratitude practice is a non-negotiable for me. Adding the layer of paying attention to my joy has been because of COVID. I don't think I would have done that had it not been my vision board screaming yeses and joy, and like, well, I don't know how to get to joy if I can't even leave the house and talk to people, but I'm finding it.
Yeah, you're finding it, you're doing it, you're living it, you're experiencing it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right, before we wrap up here, we've talked about your business. What are you offering? You know, how can people, women in particular, find out more about you, your contact details? Tell us,
Yeah. So I have a website and a blog that I blog on there every couple of weeks. I'm writing one now that's taking a little bit longer because it's a pretty heavy one on the shadow.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I did some shadow work in May. Part of the things that I worked on while I was on a social media break since mid-April, I only just came back. And the month of May was some heavy shadow work. So not going to write about all of it, but just unpacking the gifts of the shadow. Anyway, so I have a website, blogs, MakedaPennycooke.com. So it's just my name.com. If you Google Makeda's Musings, which is the name of my blog, you'll find it also. And then I send out a newsletter every couple of weeks as well, so people can sign up for my newsletter on there. In terms of my current, I'm in the process of redoing my website to align a little bit better. So what's on there is not the most current information in terms of sort of, I'll be unpacking my story a little bit more in this revamp, but that's neither here nor there. The information that's on there is good. Right now, I recognize that Black women we're dealing with a lot right now. And because Black women have always borne the burden, right? Like we have always been the ones who have had to keep the family together, hide our emotions when things were falling apart, right? When sons don't do their part and daughters are unable to do whatever, grandmothers will always step in, right? Black women have been the glue to our community since the beginning of time, right?
You said it.
And knowing that we are having to process so much right now, I'm offering my one-on-one coaching services at half off to Black women, Black Indigenous people of color, but for Black women in particular. I just want to help hold some space with them. And they don't necessarily have to be dealing with change or anything. While change is sort of my wheelhouse, that cocooning process, it could just be to have someone witness and see them during this time. And so that's what I'm doing right now, is offering that service to Black women and just cutting my services in half in terms of cost. They still get the full number of sessions, the full sessions recorded, all the things that come with that. It's a 4-month coaching package. It gets 8 sessions in it, 60 minutes. We do it by video and I record it. So you get a copy of the recording. There's check-ins in between, unlimited email access, all the things. But it's just my way of saying, we're in this together.
Yeah.
You don't have to walk this road alone. And so that's the gift that I'm offering right now.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm listening to you and I'm thinking I could be doing with this gift myself. Because self-care has to be a priority on my list. Not just now, but going forward. And it's a constant practice. It's constant practice.
It is. And I like to say that coaching, one of the greatest gifts of coaching is accountability. I mean, it's not that, I mean, yes, there's some magic to it depending on sort of the coach and sort of what we help to uncover together, but really it's accountability. Just to stay the course, stay true to what you already know, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. I hear
someone
you.
in your corner to help remind you that you're worthy of staying the course and doing the thing, whatever that might be.
So it has been really awesome to talk to you. It
Yeah,
really has.
likewise. Has been a
Thank you.
joy.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, your sharing, your heart, your generosity, and Queen,
Mm,
Queen, you have
thank
been.
you.
Thank you, and
Thank
you
you.
are.
Thank you so much.
And let's not this be the end of us.
No, for sure,
I
for
I
sure.
I need to see your face and talk to you again because it's
Absolutely.
you have opened up things in me and you have given me some words to express things that I have been struggling with. So
Mm.
I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to
Thank
hear
you.
that. This has been a pleasure and a joy and an honor and all the things. It's been so fun to connect and talk and to hear. I mean, for all the craziness that the web, the internet is, and social media is, the magic of bringing people together who live literally on opposite sides of the world, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason why our paths would have crossed had
Yeah.
it not been for social media and the internet, right? And
Yes.
so for me, there's so many gifts associated with that. And so I'm grateful and so glad that you asked me to be a part of this. I think it's amazing. I think it's a gift to encourage Black women to be with nature because, look, we know it. It's in our
Yes.
blood, even if we don't know how to
Yes.
access it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. You
You are
take care.
welcome. You too. Have a great rest of your day. I hope
You
you have a good
too.
afternoon.
Yeah.
And
I'll see you again soon.
of course, all right.
Bye
Take care.
bye. Bye.
Bye.